Hi Carlos, I know you are from Venezuela. Can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, thank you for the invitation. Well, I am a lawyer from the Catholic University in Caracas. I did my PhD in Spain, the University of Navarra. In 1999, I was the coordinator of the graduate studies of philosophy of the Simón Bolívar University in Caracas. And in that capacity, I opposed the tyranny in Venezuela, which was starting at the time. And I was threatened in 2001. I had to leave the country in 2002. I lived in the United States for 3 years, and I married a U.S. girl who is now with me in Chile. uh, so after 3 years in the U.S., I came to Chile to work at the university, and I have been here working at the Catholic University and now at the University of St. Thomas for 14 years and a half.
What do you think about the events of the last week that happened in Chile?
Oh, they are terrible. They remind me a lot of what happened in Venezuela between 1989 and 1999. In 1989, there was also popular unrest, and it started precisely with the raising of the cost of public transportation. But we know now that it was organized by the communists. Fidel Castro was behind it, and there were many armed groups, snipers, who attacked the police or attacked the military. And for a week, Caracas was out of control of the government. I don't know if you remember that. It's known as the Caracazo. But that was the beginning of the destabilization of the country. And actually, it ended in 1992 with the removal of the president, 1993, the removal of the president Carlos Andrés Pérez. He was replaced by an interim, like a temporary president. And then the next president got the presidency with a very weakened republic, and that led to the accession to power of Hugo Chavez in 1998. Yeah, in the election of 1998. So I see the same pattern, only that I think the subversion in Chile is more advanced than it was in Venezuela in 1989. So I think that they can go faster in Chile. And it's doubtless, I have no doubt that there have been an organization of terrorist events. For example, Tere Marinovich told in a YouTube channel that the same accelerant was used in all the incendiary, in all the arson attacks. And it was not only the same chemical product, it was of the same brand. That's really
Strange.
shameless. No, I mean, I think the communists sometimes do that. They like to laugh at people. So they do something that is entirely obvious to show that not even the obvious can be said, because they have such control of the press that they can change the truth about matters. That's what I see here. So it's clearly an organized revolt which tries to create the impression of popular unrest to overthrow President Piñera and bring about a constituent assembly. That to me is clear. That's the strategy of the communists.
Do you think the repression has been very violent?
No, on the contrary. I think that if one mistake President Piñera and his Minister of the Interior have made, it is not to have repressed the terrorist attacks. It was incredible to me that the terrorists could act for 2 days in a row with no action, like clear action of the police or the military. They destroyed dozens of subway stations. They destroyed supermarkets. They did all sorts of arson without being properly repressed by the police. They had to be put out of the capacity to do these acts. And even now, if the military come out of the streets, they will come back to the same terrorist acts, because their goal is to overthrow the government and to create the impression that Chile cannot be ruled anymore under the current system, which is a democratic and republican system. But they are going to create the illusion that we need a new model, which is the communist model.
What is a constituent assembly?
Well, a constituent assembly is the tool that the communists want to use in Chile to destroy the legal system and the institutions. And it's the same tool that they used in Venezuela in 1999, because people remember and know that now there is a constituent assembly in Venezuela, but there was one in 1999. And at that time, they used it to destroy entirely all the institutions and the legal system, saying that the Constituent Assembly represents the ordinary constituent power of the people, and because of that is over and above the Constitution and above all other institutions that exist in the state. So with the Constituent Assembly, they dissolved the Congress, they dissolved the Supreme Court, they dissolved the what we call the Contraloria, so like the Attorney General. They dissolved all the structure of the state, and they declared that we're going to found again from zero, from anew the Venezuelan state. They want to do that here. Now in Venezuela, that was clearly unconstitutional. The Constitution didn't establish that way to be reformed, because as the Constitution of the United States, it was a rigid constitution, and that rigidity is thought by the founders of the United States and by the founders of the Venezuelan Republic as a mechanism to prevent a demagogue from destroying the law, from destroying the legal system, with a temporary majority, which Chavez had in 1999. The same rigidity is established in the Chilean constitution. So what the communists want in Chile is to do the same thing that they did in Venezuela, like so go around this problem that they cannot control the Chilean state because the constitution has some protections, and they want to destroy those protections with one stroke of the pen. That's what they want to do. That's a constituent assembly. Now in Venezuela, as I say, it was unconstitutional, but what happened is that the government had paramilitary groups who threatened the Supreme Court. So in part because of those threats, and in part because of the erosion of the Republic, of which we can talk later, the Supreme Court agreed in a decision in January 19th, 1999, to allow the calling of the Constituent Assembly against the Constitution. That, of course, was a suicide. What the communists want to do in Chile is that Chile commits the same suicide. Like, against the Constitution, they want Chile to call for a Constituent Assembly, which would do exactly the same thing that they did in Venezuela. And there are many theorists in Chile, or I would say pseudo-theorists, like Fernando Atria, who have been writing about this for years, and his theory of the Constituent Assembly is really scary. Like, he says that there is no rule of any kind to which the Constituent Assembly should have to submit. So he says there is no moral rule, there is no traditional rule, there is no legal rule. The Constituent Assembly can found anew the whole state of Chile from nothing. So he thinks of the Constituent Assembly as a kind of mortal god, to use the Hobbesian expression. A mortal god that can do whatever without any limit. That's the idea of the communists in Chile.
What role did the international press play in what happened in Venezuela?
Well, in Venezuela, the press, not only international, but also the local press, played a very harmful role, because since 1980, more or less, or 1981, the press began to erode the Republic, as I was saying before. Like, they began to slander the Republic and say that everything was wrong, everything was corrupted, everything had to be changed. So they persuaded the Venezuelan people that a change was needed. And at that moment, Chavez appeared in that coup that he attempted in 1992 as the man who was bringing the change that Venezuela needed. And then in the following years, from 1992 to 1999 or 1998, the press kept doing the same propaganda, erosion of the Republic, which led to the tragedy of the communist rule. And that is the same thing that happened in Russia, for example. Like Solzhenitsyn, who is the the best author, I think, who has studied the Russian revolution, and the most trustworthy, I think, shows how really the Tsarist regime was not that bad, but the press persuaded the intellectuals of Russia that it was a hopeless regime and it had to be changed at all cost, no matter what. So the Russians jumped to the emptiness in 1917, and the same thing happened in Venezuela in 1998 and 1999 with the Constituent Assembly, and the communists want the Chilean people to do the same now. But here also the press is playing that same role. The press, since I came to Chile in 2005, the press have been eroding the republic, and right now in the last week we saw like a completely shameless distortion of the facts of the Chilean press and the international press. CNN has been shameless in the way they have presented what's happening in Chile. They state once and again that there are peaceful demonstrations. They never show, or very little, the terrorist nature of the triggering of the current unrest in Chile. And it was a very well organized terrorist campaign. And the problem is that even now, as I was saying, if the government brings the military out of the streets, immediately they will start the terrorist attacks. And they have in mind the Marxist theory, which is the worse is the state of things, the better for them. So they want to really make things worse. And they reject any attempt of the Republican majority of Chile to make things better for the poor, because they want things actually to be worse. They say that to make things better is just an attempt to keep the regime, which is what has to be changed, the model, which is what has to be changed. So any attempt of the democratic majority of Chile, the Republican majority of Chile, they will, to make the situation of the poor better, they will reject, because they will say that's just an attempt to keep the regime. And the only solution is to change the regime and bring the new model, which is, they don't say openly, but it's a communist model. That's what they want. So they want to destroy the Chilean state and the Chilean people, as they have destroyed the Venezuelan state and the Venezuelan people. Venezuela, as you probably know, was like a model for Latin America in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And then it had a very strong economy, and we were the harbor of all the persecuted people in the world, really. They came from Europe, they came from Chile. South America, they came from Chile, they came from all around the world to take like refuge in Venezuela. And now the communist government have killed, I calculate, around 1 million people with violence and hunger and lack of medicines, and they have displaced, like thrown out of the country, 6 million people in a country that when Chavez came to power had 25 million persons. So it's a massive destruction, not only of the institutions and the legal system, but of the people itself. It's a genocide, what's happening in Venezuela. And that's what they want to bring to Chile. And that's not accidental. Everywhere where communists come to power, they commit genocide. That's part of their goals. It's not an accident. In China, Mao killed 30 million people of hunger. In the Soviet Union, Stalin killed not less than 10 million people of hunger. In North Korea in the 90s, the loved leader, the beloved leader, amado líder in Spanish, of Korea killed 2 million people of hunger. And when the international community tried to help them, to send relief, he just intercepted it, didn't allow the relief to come to the people. Because that's part of the communist strategy, starvation. And that's what they want to bring to Chile. And they are deceiving the people, telling the people that they want a more just and more egalitarian Chile. And that's just a lie.
How do you think that people from out of Chile can help Chilean people right now?
Well, an important way to help Chile is to try to be well informed. You have to avoid getting your information from the major mainstream television channels because they lie or they hide the information. So you have to find good sources of information that there are in YouTube, in the internet. There are good sources of information, and with these, well, the facts that I have told, you can judge a little bit what and distinguish the good sources and the bad sources. You can distinguish what sources are good and what sources are not so good, I think. So that's a way to help, just to get the right information, to spread it all in the best way you can.
Thanks, Carlos.
You are welcome, and thank you for the invitation.